Are you running a big improvement machine? That is what Mark Rosenthal calls it, when companies crank out process improvements one after the other, faster than the process can absorb the improvements. It's kind of a overproduction, Rosenthal calls it. It's an overproduction of improvement ideas rather than, let's say, an overproduction of things. But it suffers from the same problems. Whenever you overproduce something, in this case, big ideas, you're doing something that can't be absorbed by the downstream process. So if you're making improvements too fast and your process can't absorb them, well then it's waste, right? Your improvements got to be able to roll through. You can't just keep piling them on. Rosenthal talks about this in his article, Overproduction versus Fast Improvement Cycles. And one problem is that changes are often too big, says Rosenthal. So big, they can't really be, let's say, tested out on paper before you throw them at the process. And the result is that when you do finally throw this big improvement at the process, there's a flurry of activity trying to make the various pieces of the improvement work. Because when you get down to it, if you think about it, a large change is really just a whole bunch of small changes in one big package. So it's not like you're saying, do this one big thing. And everybody does it and does this one big thing. It's no, you're throwing this big package and there's all these little pieces, there's all these little moving parts, and this person's got to do this and this person's got to do that. We're thinking maybe like a blitz, right? Well, these people are doing it. Some of these parts may come together really well, some of them may cause a bottleneck, but you can't deal with it properly because you threw the whole thing at them all at once.
Right. I mean, it's a perfect quality issue that you're talking about here, because
you're batching.
You're batching, but it's also process orientation. Right. And it's throughput, like you're saying. I mean, you don't want to batch that stuff. You want to do it individually if you can and break it down into its component parts.
It is. It's basically, kind of a single piece flow is what you're looking for. And so that's where he gets around to talking about a slow, steady stream of small, and we're talking, small, changes. And the small changes can be visualized a little bit more easier. They can be vetted much more easily, let's say on paper, so to speak, before rolling them out. So now what you're doing is, rather than this one big chunk that you're throwing at people, you're feeding them small little changes. Here's a small little change. Here's a small little change. They're rolling out slowly, but they're small. So this gives you a lot of real advantages. We'll get to those in a second. So when he says, one thing that happens when you start doing these small little changes is that you start getting some immediate feedback. And another problem he points to is that very often people will wait for everything to be perfect before they say, okay, we've got it all figured out, so we're going to throw this change at you and do it. He says, and the problem is when you're waiting that long, even with small changes, you're denying yourself some data. He says, go ahead and don't wait for that small little change to be perfect on paper before you say, let's roll this out. Get it going. He says, a couple things happen from that. Once you get those small changes out there, you'll start getting feedback. Is this change working? Is it not change? Is that change not working? You can take that data and affect maybe the other small changes that are waiting in the queue, right? They haven't gone out there yet. Now contrast this, when you throw one big ball of wax out there, if there's some data that could have affected some of the other changes that were in this big package, well, it's too late. You've already thrown the whole thing out there. Now you've got to kind of scurry and kind of patch and mend and all that, right? Do it single piece, get that feedback, and that can allow you to adjust your other improvements before you roll them out. As he says, the sooner you start actively learning and trying to design perfection, the quicker you'll get something working. So another key point is that your employees need to learn how to do something. They need to learn how to implement change. And learning something new always involves doing it slowly at first and probably poorly, but you get better. And this is a slow process. These are small changes. And so this is okay. Slow is okay because you're only slowing down one small little piece of the puzzle. But eventually what happens, says Rosenthal, is you roll out these small changes. These small changes, they happen slowly. You're getting data for them, but they happen smoothly, again, because they're small. And so kind of his mantra is that you end up with something's rolling out slowly but smoothly, but in the long run, it's actually faster than if you were to bundle all these things into one package and chuck the whole thing out there all at once. That slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah, yeah.
What he says.
It's like the it's like the analogy for me is it's like you have a little, like, sorry Noah, 4-foot snake. Right, a little snake that tried to eat like a fat chicken,
right?
So like it eats it and it just lays there for like a day, trying to just huge chicken in the middle of it. Yeah. And like eventually it'll. Yeah. But I mean, as opposed to having little meals as it goes. I mean, the idea is it slows everything down. I mean, you're not going to really be able to be efficient with that. I mean, eventually, yes, you will be able to digest even the largest of projects, but. It's not, as you say, it's not smooth is fast, really, when you think about it. And you think you're being fast by trying to swallow this big thing, but it's just going to slow everything down. And the other thing I think about is its value streams, right? I mean, you talk about flow, you've got to understand that if you put something into that value stream that's going to obstruct everybody in the team having to focus on it, you're not really going to be able to throughput value to the customer eventually. So,
and that's the other thing, this just occurred to me as well, is usually that small change is going to affect fewer people. So you may have a little bit of disruption over here as that group or that person's coming up to speed on how to implement this process improvement. As opposed to you throw this big package out there, now everybody's disrupted because everybody's all, butts and elbows running around trying to get things done, and now you've disrupted the entire process.
Well, you think about it, I mean, if you do have a few people on the team who are disrupted, but then can learn, they then are advocates to help the new process, the new skill they've learned, share it with other people on other parts of the team. So, I mean, maybe you disrupt 5 people as opposed to 25 or 50. Those 5 then will maybe suffer for a little while and have to figure it out. But once they do, and then you begin to spread it, they can then help be advocates for the change. Say, hey, yes, I know what you're going through. I know you're having this problem right now. I had that when I was starting out with this too, but here's the value eventually for doing it, so stick with it, I'll help you get through it. That's really helpful.
So don't batch your process improvement.
Don't eat a big chicken if you're
Don't
a
eat a big
snake.
chicken, small.
Eat
small little pieces,
that's
nuggets.
Right. That's
right. Little chicken nuggets.